The massive Zephyrian hunting ship hung in space like a dark metal giant above the forbidden moon. Inside the command center, Commander Vex 7 stared at the empty display screens with growing anger. His silver skin had turned deep purple, a sign that his patience was running thin. "Report," he demanded from his hunting team. Lieutenant Cax 9 stepped forward, his forearms trembling slightly. "Sir, we have deployed all sonic nets across the northern continent. The plasma traps are active in the southern valleys. Our heat sensors cover every cave system on this rock." "And the results?" Vex 7 asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing, sir. Not a single shadow dragon has been caught. They seem to avoid our technology completely." Vex 7 slammed his fist against the metal wall. The sound echoed through the ship like thunder. His hunting expedition had been the pride of the Zephyrian military. They had brought the most advanced equipment in the galaxy. Their government had spent millions of credits on this mission. Shadow dragons were worth more than entire star systems. Their black scales could be made into armor that stopped any weapon. Their fire breath could power cities for decades. A single adult dragon could buy a small planet. The Zephyrians had been hunting these creatures for centuries, but they had never found a moon with so many dragons living together. Intelligence reports suggested at least 50 dragons called this place home. Vex 7 had dreamed of returning with enough captured beasts to make his species rich beyond imagination. Instead, his traps sat empty. "Perhaps we should try the quantum snares," suggested another hunter. "We already tried those yesterday," Vex 7 replied. "The dragons flew right through them like they were not even there. These beasts seem to know exactly where every trap is placed." The truth was worse than Vex 7 wanted to admit. The shadow dragons were not just avoiding the traps. They were playing with the hunting team. Several times dragons had been spotted flying in circles around the sonic nets, almost like they were laughing at the alien technology. "Sir, we could try the sleep gas bombs," offered the weapons specialist. "On dragons that breathe fire," Vex 7 asked. "The gas would burn up before it could affect them." The hunting team fell silent. They had been on this moon for 3 standard cycles, which was about 9 Earth days. Every piece of advanced technology they possessed had failed completely. The dragons seemed to understand exactly how each trap worked and easily avoided them. Outside the ship, the forbidden moon spun slowly in the light of twin suns. The surface looked peaceful from space, with green forests and blue lakes scattered between rocky mountains. It was hard to believe that some of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy lived down there. Shadow dragons were not just valuable because of their scales and fire. They were also incredibly intelligent. Some scientists believed they were smarter than most spacefaring species. This intelligence made them nearly impossible to hunt using normal methods. The Zephyrians had studied dragon behavior for decades before launching this expedition. They knew dragons were proud creatures that lived alone except during mating season. They knew dragons were territorial and would fight other dragons that entered their space. They knew dragons were suspicious of all technology and avoided anything that smelled like a trap. What the Zephyrians did not understand was why so many dragons lived peacefully together on this one moon. Intelligence reports had been unclear about this unusual behavior. Most experts assumed the dragons were fighting over territory and would be easier to catch while distracted. Instead, the dragons seemed to work together to avoid every trap. "Sir, perhaps we should request reinforcements," suggested Lieutenant Cax 9. "With what excuse?" Vex 7 replied bitterly. "That 50 of our best hunters cannot catch a single animal using the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The High Command would have us all sent to the mining colonies." The commander walked to the observation window and stared down at the moon's surface. Somewhere down there, dragons were flying free while his million-credit expedition failed completely. His career would be over when they returned empty-handed. "There has to be something we are missing," he said quietly. The hunting team had tried everything. Sonic nets that should have stunned the dragons were ignored. Plasma traps that could hold a battleship were avoided completely. Heat-seeking missiles that could track a target across star systems somehow lost the dragons in clear sky. Even their most advanced weapon, the neural disruptor, had failed. This device could shut down the brain functions of any known life form. When they finally got close enough to a dragon to use it, the weapon simply did not work. The dragon had looked at them with what almost seemed like amusement before flying away. Maybe the intelligence reports were wrong, suggested another hunter. Maybe there are no dragons here at all. We have seen them, Vex 7 replied. They are here. They are just too smart for our methods. As if to prove his point, a shadow dragon suddenly appeared outside the observation window. The massive creature was at least 30 feet long, with scales that seemed to absorb light itself. Golden eyes stared directly at the commander through the thick glass. The dragon hovered there for several long moments, studying the alien hunters with obvious intelligence. Then it opened its mouth and breathed a stream of silver fire that spelled out symbols in the vacuum of space. The symbols formed words in the ancient dragon language. The ship's translator worked frantically to decode the message. When the translation appeared on screen, every hunter in the command center felt their blood turn cold. The message read, "Your toys are broken. Go home." The dragon flew away, leaving the hunting team staring at empty space. Vex 7 realized at that moment that they were not the hunters on this moon. They were being hunted by creatures far more intelligent than they had ever imagined. The dragons were not just avoiding their traps. They were studying the aliens, learning their methods, and sending messages to show their superiority. "Prepare the ship for departure," Vex 7 ordered quietly. "Sir?" Lieutenant Cax 9 asked in surprise. "We leave now before these creatures decide to stop playing games with us." The Zephyrian hunting ship lifted off from the moon's surface 3 hours later, carrying nothing but shame and empty cages. 3 days after the Zephyrian hunting ship disappeared into space, a small human transport vessel approached the Forbidden Moon. The ship was old and patched with different types of metal plates. Paint was peeling from its hull, and one of the engines made strange noises that would have worried most pilots. But Amy Martinez was not most pilots. She had been flying patched-up ships since she was 16 years old, and this old transport had never let her down. The ship was ugly, but it was reliable, and that was all that mattered for her research mission. Amy was 26 years old and looked like a mixture of human and elf heritage. Her ears came to subtle points, and her silver hair fell in waves past her shoulders. Her eyes were the bright green color that marked her as part of the hybrid population that had emerged after first contact with the elf worlds. She was also one of the poorest graduate students in the Galactic University system. Her research grant was tiny compared to the millions that military expeditions received, but Amy had learned to make the most of very little money, and she was excited about this opportunity to study the unique crystal formations on the Forbidden Moon. The university had warned her about the dragons, of course. They had told her to stay away from the deeper caves where the largest creatures lived. They had given her emergency beacons and instructed her to call for help if she saw anything dangerous. Amy had nodded politely and agreed to all their safety requirements. But privately, she was hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary shadow, dragons. As a xenobiology student, she found all alien life forms fascinating, especially the intelligent ones. Her ship touched down in a small clearing near the equatorial region of the moon. Amy had chosen this landing site because it was far from the areas where the Zephyrian hunters had been setting their traps. She wanted to study natural crystal formations, not the melted remains of alien technology. The air outside was breathable. For humans, though, it tasted slightly metallic. Amy put on her hiking boots and loaded her backpack with sample containers, measuring tools and enough food for 3 days of fieldwork. Her plan was to explore the nearby cave systems and collect mineral samples for analysis. The first cave she entered took her breath away. Crystals grew from every surface in colors she had never seen before. Purple formations twisted up from the floor like frozen lightning. Blue spires hung from the ceiling like icicles made of pure light. Green clusters sparkled in the corners, like captured stars. Amy pulled out her portable scanner and began taking measurements. The crystals seemed to be made of ordinary silicon compounds, but they were arranged in patterns that defied normal geological processes. Something had been shaping these formations with incredible precision. As she worked deeper into the cave, Amy noticed that the air was getting warmer. Her scanner detected traces of sulfur and other chemicals that suggested recent volcanic activity. But the moon was supposed to be geologically dead according to her research files. She found the answer when she reached the back of the cave. A large circular area had been melted smooth like glass. The walls around this area were covered in crystals that formed perfect geometric patterns. In the center of the melted area were the clear marks of a large creature that had been sleeping there regularly. Dragonfire, Amy whispered to herself. That's how these crystals are formed. She had read about dragonfire in her xenobiology classes, but she had never seen the effects in person. According to her textbooks, dragonfire was not just flame. It was a complex chemical reaction that could reshape matter at the molecular level. When dragons slept, their breath would slowly escape and react with the surrounding rock to create these beautiful crystal formations. Amy spent the next 2 hours taking detailed measurements and samples from the dragon sleeping area. She was so absorbed in her work that she did not notice the soft sound of massive wings landing at the cave entrance. The shadow dragon that had just arrived was one of the creatures that had been playing with the Zephyrian hunters for the past week. Its name was something like the sound of wind through mountain peaks, but humans could not pronounce it properly. The dragon was curious about this new visitor who smelled different from the previous aliens. The dragon crept silently into the cave, using its natural ability to blend with shadows. Shadow dragons could make themselves nearly invisible when they wanted to, which was one reason they were so hard to hunt. The creature moved closer and closer to Amy, studying this strange being that was examining its sleeping place. Most creatures would have sensed the dragon's presence by now. The massive predator gave off an aura of power that made smaller animals run in terror. But Amy was completely focused on her crystal samples, measuring their chemical composition and taking detailed photographs. The dragon was puzzled by this behavior. Every other creature that had entered its cave had either run away immediately or tried to attack. This small being was doing neither. Instead, she was looking at the crystals with what almost seemed like appreciation. Finally, the dragon grew tired of hiding and allowed itself to become visible. It settled onto the cave floor about 10 feet behind Amy and waited to see what would happen. Amy sensed the change in air pressure and turned around slowly. When she saw the massive shadow dragon sitting behind her, her first reaction was not fear. It was wonder. "Oh my," she said softly. "You're beautiful." The dragon blinked in surprise. No one had ever called it beautiful before. Most beings called shadow dragons terrifying, or dangerous, or valuable for their scales, but never beautiful. Amy took a careful step closer, moving slowly so she would not startle the creature. "Are you the one who made these crystal formations? They're absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like them in any geology textbook." The dragon tilted its massive head to one side. This strange being was not afraid, was not trying to capture it, and was not running away. Instead, she seemed genuinely interested in the crystals that the dragon had always taken for granted. "The way you've shaped the silicon compounds is amazing," Amy continued, pulling out her scanner. "The molecular structure suggests incredibly precise temperature control. May I ask how you do it?" The dragon had never been asked a question by a potential prey animal before. Most creatures were too busy screaming to have conversations, but this small being seemed to genuinely want to know about dragonfire chemistry. Amy sat down on the cave floor and patted the ground beside her. "Would you like to see what I've discovered about your crystals? I think you might find the analysis interesting." The dragon stared at her for a long moment, then slowly moved closer. For the first time in its long life, it was curious about what another species might have learned about dragon abilities. Amy began explaining her measurements in simple terms, showing the dragon how its breath created different types of crystals, depending on temperature and chemical composition. The dragon listened with growing fascination as this small being described processes that it had never consciously understood. The shadow dragon had never experienced anything like this before. For 3 hours, Amy sat beside the massive creature, explaining her research findings and asking questions about dragon biology. She showed no fear, only genuine curiosity and respect for the dragon's abilities. Amy learned that the dragon's name sounded like wind through stone canyons. Since she could not pronounce the real name, she asked permission to call the dragon canyon. The creature seemed pleased by this simple courtesy No one had ever asked a dragon's permission for anything before. Canyon had lived on this moon for over 200 years. During that time, hundreds of hunters from dozens of species had tried to capture or kill the dragons that lived here. The dragons had learned to work together to defend their territory, sharing information about new threats and helping each other avoid traps. The metal skin hunters from last week were particularly amusing, Canyon told Amy through a combination of gestures and simple telepathic images. Their toys made so much noise that we could hear them coming from miles away. Amy laughed at the mental image Canyon shared of Zephyrian hunters setting elaborate traps, while dragons watched from nearby cliffs. They probably spent years planning that expedition, she said, and you all knew exactly what they were doing. We learn fast, Canyon replied with what might have been dragon amusement. Hunters always use the same methods. Loud machines, bright lights, metal cages. They think we are simple animals who will walk into obvious traps. But you're obviously highly intelligent, Amy said. Haven't any of the hunting species figured that out? Canyon's mental response was tinged with sadness. They do not want to know we are intelligent. If we are smart, then hunting us becomes murder instead of sport. It is easier for them to pretend we are beasts. Amy felt a surge of anger at the injustice of it all. These magnificent creatures were being hunted by species who refused to acknowledge their intelligence simply because it was more profitable to treat them as animals. That's terrible, she said. You should be studied and respected, not hunted for your scales. You are the first to say such things, Canyon replied. Most small beings run when they see us. You sit and talk as if we are equals. Aren't we? Amy asked. You're clearly more intelligent than most beings I know. You've mastered chemistry at the molecular level, you work together as a society, and you've outsmarted every hunting expedition that's come here. I'd say you're superior to most species, not inferior. Canyon had never heard such words before. The dragon's scales shifted from deep black to dark blue, a sign of deep emotional response. For centuries, dragons had been treated as monsters or resources. This small human was the first being to suggest they deserved respect. As the day wore on, Canyon introduced Amy to the complex society that existed on the moon. She learned that over 60 dragons lived here in 3 different communities. The northern community specialized in ice formation and weather control. The southern dragons were masters of fire chemistry and crystal growth. The central community, where Canyon lived, focused on protection and coordination between the other groups. Each dragon had specific skills and responsibilities. Some were scouts who watched for approaching threats. Others were teachers who passed knowledge to younger dragons. A few were ambassadors who maintained peaceful relations with the small number of harmless species that also lived on the moon. You have a complete civilization here, Amy said in amazement. Why don't you make contact with the galactic community? You could share your knowledge and maybe stop the hunting. Canyon's response was bitter. We tried that once, long ago. A dragon ambassador went to the Galaxy Council to speak for our people. They put him in a cage and sold his scales to the highest bidder. Amy felt tears in her eyes at the image Canyon shared. She saw a proud dragon in ornate ceremonial gear standing before a council of various alien species, trying to establish diplomatic relations. Instead of listening to his words, they had seen only the value of his physical form. That was 3 centuries ago. Canyon continued. Since then, we hide from other species and defend our territory when necessary. It is safer than trusting beings who see us as walking treasure chests. Not all species are like that, Amy protested. Humans have learned to work with many different intelligent races. We could help you make contact with more reasonable governments. Humans are different, Canyon admitted. We have watched your species for decades as you spread across the galaxy. You make friends with beings that others would destroy or enslave. But you are few, and the hunters are many. Amy spent the rest of the day learning about dragon culture and sharing information about human society. Canyon was fascinated by Amy's descriptions of universities and research institutions where knowledge was shared freely. The concept of learning for its own sake, rather than for survival, was almost foreign to dragon experience. When evening approached, Amy realized she needed to return to her ship for supplies and to file her daily research report with the university. Canyon offered to fly her back to her landing site, an offer that Amy accepted with excitement. Flying on Dragonback was like nothing Amy had ever experienced. Canyon's massive wings moved with silent power, carrying them both high above the moon's surface. Amy could see the crystal formations in dozens of caves glowing softly in the twilight. Each glow represented a dragon's sleeping place, and she realized she was seeing an entire civilization spread out below her. "How many dragons live in the galaxy?" she asked as they soared through the night air. "Fewer each year," Canyon replied sadly. "We once lived on hundreds of worlds. Now we survive on perhaps 20 moons and hidden planets. Your species calls us shadow dragons because we hide in the shadows to avoid hunters." "That has to change," Amy said firmly. "Beings this intelligent and capable deserve to live freely, not hide in fear." Canyon landed gently near Amy's ship and helped her unload her equipment. "You will stay longer?" the dragon asked hopefully. "I have 3 weeks of research funding," Amy replied. "And I think I've found something much more important than crystal formations to study." "What is that?" Amy smiled and patted the dragon's massive foreleg, proof that dragons are not just intelligent, but that they're actually more advanced than most spacefaring species. "If I can document your society properly, maybe I can convince the galactic community to recognize dragons as equals rather than targets." Canyon's scales shifted to bright silver, a color that indicated hope and joy. For the first time in centuries, a dragon dared to believe that change might be possible. "Other dragons will want to meet you," Canyon said. "If you truly wish to help us, there are many who would share their knowledge." "I would be honored," Amy replied. "But first let me send a message to my university. I think I'm going to need a much bigger research grant." As Amy worked inside her ship, Canyon settled down nearby to keep watch. The dragon had lived through centuries of disappointment and betrayal, but something about this small human gave him hope for a different future. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Amy's campsite. She woke to find 3 dragons waiting patiently outside her ship. Canyon was there, along with 2 others that she had not met before. The first new dragon was smaller than Canyon, with scales that shifted between deep blue and silver. This was Frost, a young adult who specialized in ice formation and atmospheric control. The second dragon was ancient and enormous, easily twice the size of Canyon. Her scales were so dark, they seemed to absorb light, and her golden eyes held the wisdom of centuries. This was Luna, the eldest dragon on the moon and leader of the central community. Amy stepped out of her ship slowly, showing respect for the massive creatures that had come to visit her. She could sense that this was an important moment, though she was not sure why. "Canyon told us about your conversation yesterday." Luna spoke directly into Amy's mind with telepathic words that felt like ancient music. "We have decided to test whether your words match your intentions." "Test me how?" Amy asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Being evaluated by creatures this powerful was intimidating, even though they had shown no aggression. "You claim that humans can see dragons as equals rather than prey," Frost said, his mental voice carrying the sound of winter wind. "But words are easy to speak. We wish to see if you can act on those words when it matters." Luna stepped forward, her massive head coming down to Amy's eye level. "There is a problem that has troubled our people for many months. If you truly wish to help dragons, perhaps you can find a solution that our own wisdom has not discovered." Amy felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I'll certainly try to help. What's the problem?" Canyon answered by sharing a complex mental image. Amy saw a section of the moon's northern region where the ice dragons lived. In the center of their territory was a crashed spaceship, much larger than Amy's transport. The ship had been there for almost a year, and its presence was disrupting the delicate environmental balance that the dragons maintained. "The ship belongs to the Corvin Empire," Luna explained. "It crashed during a storm while trying to hunt us. The crew died on impact, but the ship's power core is slowly leaking radiation into the soil. The ice formations that our northern cousins depend on are beginning to melt." Frost added his own details. "The radiation is also affecting the plant life that supports the small creatures we protect. Within another year, the entire northern ecosystem will collapse unless the ship is removed." Why haven't you moved it yourselves? Amy asked. Dragonfire cannot touch the ship's hull, Canyon replied. It is made of materials that resist our abilities. We could destroy it completely, but that would spread the radiation contamination across a much wider area. We need the ship removed, intact. Amy nodded, beginning to understand the complexity of the problem. And I suppose the galactic salvage companies won't come here because they're afraid of dragons. Exactly, Luna said with what might have been approval. Even if we contacted them directly, they would assume it was a trap. Dragons asking for help sounds impossible to most species. Amy walked around her campsite, thinking through the situation. The dragons had presented her with a problem that required both technical knowledge and diplomatic skills. They wanted to see if she could find a solution that respected dragon autonomy while getting the help they needed. I think I can help, Amy said finally, but it will require you to trust me with something very important. What do you need? Luna asked. I need permission to reveal the existence of your civilization to specific humans who can help with the salvage operation. I know people who would jump at the chance to study dragon technology and culture, but I can't contact them without telling them why. The three dragons looked at each other, communicating through subtle changes in scale color and wing position. Amy waited patiently while they held what was obviously a serious discussion. This is a great risk, Luna said finally. If your people betray our trust, it could mean the end of our hidden sanctuary. I understand, Amy replied. But I think it's a risk worth taking. The humans I have in mind are scientists and engineers, not hunters or soldiers. They would be fascinated by dragon intelligence, not interested in exploiting it. Frost was the first to agree. The young human speaks with conviction, and our current path leads to disaster anyway. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. Canyon added his support. Amy has already proven that some humans can see us as equals. Maybe others of her species can do the same. Luna remained silent for several long moments, weighing centuries of caution against the desperate need for help. Finally, she gave a slow nod. We will try your plan, the ancient dragon decided, but with conditions. You may contact your human allies, but they must come here as guests, not conquerors. They must respect our territory and our laws, and they must understand that they are here only because we allow it. Agreed, Amy said immediately. I'll make sure they understand the situation completely before they arrive. There is one more condition, Luna added. If your plan fails, if these humans prove to be no different from other species, you must leave with them and never return. We cannot risk exposure twice. Amy felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She was being asked to stake not only her own future, but potentially the safety of an entire dragon civilization, on her faith in human nature. I understand, she said. I accept your conditions. Luna stepped back and spread her enormous wings. Then we will show you the crashed ship so you can understand what needs to be done. But first you must meet the northern community and gain their approval as well. They are the ones most affected by this problem. Amy spent the next 2 days traveling with her dragon guides to the northern region of the moon. The journey gave her a chance to see more of dragon civilization than any outsider had ever witnessed. She saw community workshops where dragons crafted tools from crystal and metal. She observed schools where elder dragons taught young ones about chemistry, physics, and philosophy. She watched as dragons worked together on complex engineering projects that rivaled anything she had seen in human space. The northern community was smaller than the central group, consisting of about 20 dragons who specialized in climate, control, and ice formation. Their leader was an ancient female named Aurora, whose scales constantly shifted through shades of blue and white like captured northern lights. Aurora was more suspicious of Amy than the southern dragons had been. Ice dragons were naturally cautious, and they had suffered the most from previous hunting expeditions because their territory was easier for ships to reach. Why should we trust a species that has never helped us before? Aurora asked bluntly. Amy spent hours answering questions and demonstrating her genuine respect for dragon intelligence. She shared her research findings and explained her plans for helping remove the crashed ship. Slowly, Aurora's suspicion gave way to cautious hope. The crashed Corvin ship was even worse than Amy had imagined. The massive vessel had plowed a deep furrow through the northern ice fields when it fell. Its power core was indeed leaking radiation, and the effects were visible everywhere. Plants were withering, ice formations were melting into toxic puddles, and the small animals that lived in the area had fled to safer regions. "This will require a specialized salvage team," Amy said after examining the wreckage. "But I know exactly who to call." Amy's message to Earth reached Dr. Lisa Chen 3 days later. Lisa was one of Amy's former professors and now headed the university's xenobiology department. She was also known throughout human space as someone who approached alien contact with respect and scientific curiosity rather than fear or greed. The message was carefully worded to avoid revealing too much over potentially monitored communication channels. Amy simply said she had discovered a civilization that needed help with environmental cleanup, and that the opportunity for cultural exchange would be unprecedented. Lisa's response came within hours. She would bring a small team of specialists, including environmental engineers, xenobiologists, and cultural anthropologists. More importantly, she promised to approach the situation with the open mind that Amy requested. While waiting for the human team to arrive, Amy continued her work with the dragons. She documented their language, studied their social structures, and learned about their advanced understanding of chemistry and physics. The more she discovered, the more convinced she became that dragons represented one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the galaxy. Canyon became her constant companion and guide. The dragon seemed to enjoy explaining complex concepts to Amy and was fascinated by her descriptions of human society. They spent hours discussing the differences between dragon and human approaches to science, art, and philosophy. "Your people learn by building on the knowledge of others," Canyon observed during one of their conversations. "Dragons learn through individual discovery and personal experience. Both methods have advantages." "Maybe that's why we need each other," Amy suggested. "Dragons have insights that humans would never develop alone, and humans have collaborative techniques that could benefit dragon research." The idea of cooperation between species was still new to Canyon, but he was beginning to see the possibilities. Dragons had been isolated for so long that they had forgotten the benefits of sharing knowledge with other intelligent races. 5 days after Amy's message, Dr. Chen's ship arrived at the moon. Amy had convinced the dragons to remain hidden during the initial landing, wanting to prepare her colleagues before making introductions. Lisa Chen was a small woman with graying hair and eyes that missed nothing. She brought 3 companions: Dr. Marcus Webb, an environmental engineer who specialized in hazardous waste cleanup; Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist with experience in first contact situations; and Dr. James Rodriguez, a cultural anthropologist who studied non-human societies. Amy met them at their landing site and immediately began explaining the situation. She told them about the crashed ship, the environmental damage, and the need for specialized salvage equipment. But she saved the most important information for last. "The beings who need our help are shadow dragons," she said quietly. "And they're not animals. They're one of the most advanced civilizations I've ever encountered." The reaction was everything Amy had hoped for. Instead of fear or disbelief, her colleagues showed excitement and scientific curiosity. Dr. Kim immediately began asking questions about dragon biology and social structure. Dr. Rodriguez wanted to know about their culture and communication methods. Dr. Webb focused on the technical aspects of the salvage operation. "This is incredible," Lisa said after Amy had finished her briefings. "If dragons are truly as intelligent as you describe, then first contact protocols apply. We're not just doing environmental cleanup, we're establishing diplomatic relations with a new species." "They're not new," Amy corrected. "They're ancient. They've been hiding from other species because of centuries of hunting and exploitation. We have a chance to change that, but only if we prove that humans can be trusted." The first meeting between the human team and the dragons took place the next morning in a large cave that served as a neutral meeting ground. Canyon, Luna, and Aurora represented the dragon communities, while Amy served as translator and cultural mediator. The initial moments were tense. Even though Amy had prepared both sides, the reality of sitting across from each other was overwhelming for everyone involved. The humans stared in awe at the massive, intelligent creatures that had been dismissed as animals by most of the galaxy. The dragons studied these new humans carefully, watching for any signs of the greed or aggression they had learned to expect from other species. Dr. Kim broke the ice by asking Luna about dragon longevity and its effects on cultural development. The ancient dragon was pleased by the respectful tone of the question and began sharing information about how dragon society had evolved over millennia. Dr. Rodriguez followed with questions about dragon art and philosophy, showing genuine interest in understanding their worldview. Aurora warmed to him immediately, describing the complex ice sculptures that served as both art and historical records for her people. Dr. Webb focused on the practical problem of removing the crashed ship. He worked with Canyon to understand the technical challenges involved, including the radiation containment and the need for specialized equipment. Within hours, the initial suspicion on both sides had given way to enthusiastic collaboration. The humans were fascinated by dragon knowledge of chemistry and physics. The dragons were intrigued by human collaborative research methods and technological approaches to problem solving. "This is exactly what I hoped would happen," Amy told Lisa, during a break in the discussions. "Dragons and humans complement each other perfectly. They have knowledge we need, and we have techniques they can use." The salvage operation took 2 weeks to complete. Dr. Webb's team brought in specialized equipment from human space, while the dragons provided precise environmental control and chemical analysis. Working together, they were able to remove the crashed ship without spreading contamination and begin the process of healing the damaged ecosystem. But the real breakthrough came from the cultural exchange that developed alongside the cleanup work. Dragons shared centuries of accumulated knowledge about molecular chemistry, environmental science, and sustainable technology. Humans contributed collaborative research techniques, advanced mathematics, and engineering approaches that dragons had never considered. Dr. Rodriguez documented dragon history and philosophy, creating the first comprehensive record of their civilization. Dr. Kim studied dragon biology and discovered that their longevity and intelligence made them ideal partners for long-term scientific projects. Dr. Webb learned about dragon fire, chemistry, and realized it could revolutionize human manufacturing processes. Most importantly, both species began to see possibilities that neither had imagined alone. Dragons realized that not all spacefaring races were threats to be avoided. Humans discovered that some of their greatest potential allies had been hiding in the shadows, dismissed as monsters by less enlightened species. On the final day of the cleanup operation, Luna made an announcement that would change galactic history. "We have decided to end our isolation," the ancient dragon declared. "Amy Martinez has proven that humans can see dragons as equals and partners. We wish to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity and begin collaborative research projects." Amy felt tears in her eyes as she realized what this meant. Dragons would no longer need to hide in the shadows. They could take their place as one of the galaxy's great civilizations, sharing their knowledge and benefiting from contact with other intelligent species. "There will be challenges ahead," Canyon told Amy as they watched the human ship prepare for departure. "Not all species will accept us as easily as your people have. There will still be those who see us only as valuable prey. Then we'll face those challenges together," Amy replied. "Humans have experience dealing with hostile species, and dragons have proven they can outthink any hunter. Together, we'll be stronger than either species could be alone." 3 months later, the first formal dragon-human research station was established on Luna's moon. Amy returned as the station's director, leading joint projects that advanced both species' understanding of science and technology. The Zephyrian hunting fleet that had failed so completely returned to find humans and dragons working side by side. Commander Vex 7 stared in disbelief at the sight of creatures he had considered animals collaborating as equals, with one of the galaxy's most successful spacefaring species. The age of dragon hunting was over. The age of dragon-human cooperation had begun. And it all started with one graduate student who treated intelligent beings with the respect they deserved.